It is now 5:30, and we do have a quorum present, so I will call this meeting of the December 13th, 2021 Plan Commission to order. First, we will hear a few words from our technical facilitator, Jesse Poole. Jesse.
All right, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking on the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. The chair, clerk, and technical facilitator are responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. During any roll call, all panelists will be unmuted briefly. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesse. First on our agenda is public comment. We have two registrants for public comment, Tommy Hanna and Simone Hanna, and I would like to ask them if they are intending to speak on agenda item 3. It appears that they may be looking to speak on agenda item 3, which is the South Madison plan, and if that is the case, it is best to wait until that agenda item is heard. Tommy?
Yes. It's
agenda item 3?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll hold off and call on you at that time.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next on our agenda are communications, disclosures, and recusals. Members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Are there any disclosures or recusals? Commissioner Cantrell.
I'm auditing a ceramics class at Edgewood College, but I don't think that will affect my vote on that issue.
Okay, thank you. Any other disclosures or recusals? Seeing no raised hands, we will move on to the minutes of November 22nd regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing no raised hands, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Shepard. Are there any comments about the minutes? Seeing none, I will assume unanimous consent to approve the minutes unless I see a raised hand to object. The minutes are approved unanimously. We have a regular meeting on January 10th and 24th, and then on February 7th. Okay, moving on. I will now, Commissioner Cantrell.
I will not be at the January 10th nor the January 24th meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now moving on to the consent agenda. It is a custom of the Plan Commission to remove from the agenda those items on which staff believes an application has had sufficient review to warrant approval with all of the conditions placed upon it by various city departments, on which the applicant accepts those conditions, and there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to that item. These items are placed onto a consent agenda and are addressed at the beginning of our meeting. And then people who are interested in those items can disconnect unless a member of the commission requests separation, in which case the item is removed from the consent agenda and taken in the regular course of business. And we also do include on our consent agenda referral items and also items requested to be placed on file. Of the items before us today, the following agenda items are proposed for the consent agenda. Agenda item 2, agenda item 6, and then for referral, agenda item 7. For consent, agenda item 8 and 9. For referral, agenda item 10, 11, and 12. For the consent agenda, agenda item 13. To be placed on file without prejudice, agenda item 14. Consent agenda 15, 16. For referral, 17. And then consent agenda 19. Are there requests for separation of any of those items? Seeing no raised hands, I do want to make a comment, but on agenda item 9, although I don't want to take it off of the consent agenda, I am concerned by the significant difference in the proposed number of units per acre versus the plan number of dwelling units per acre. That's a significant difference. And I think back to when I was Alder of District 2, and when we had significant differences like that, we did amend the applicable neighborhood plan and in discussion with the neighborhood. I have talked about this with Heather Stouter, and she is going to follow up and look into options, but my preference is not to have this kind of vast difference between plans and what we are considering, and particularly on the consent agenda for passage. It really, I think, degrades the value of our plans and the meaning of our plans. So thank you, Heather, for moving forward to look into what we might be able to do on that. Okay, now I will be reading into the minutes, the items that are on our consent agenda. Agenda item 2, Legistar 68659, authorizing an agreement with Dane County along with the land purchase, land division, and annexation of approximately 8 acres of land located in the town of Verona to extend the Ice Age Scenic Trail and amending the Parks Division capital budget to include funding of the acquisition. Agenda item 6, Legistar 68213, amending Table 28H1 to correct an inconsistency between the table and Section 28.151 of the Madison General Ordinances. And then for referral to the January 24th, 2022 commission meeting at the request of the applicant is agenda item 7, Legistar 68639. For on the consent agenda, then Legistar agenda item 8, Legistar 68642, creating sections of the Madison General Ordinances to amend a planned development district for property located at 5818 Gemini Drive, 3rd Alder District, amending the PD GDP plan development and approving a specific implementation plan. Agenda item 9, Legistar 68644, creating sections of the Madison General Ordinances to amend a planned development district at property located at 5817 Halley Way, 3rd Alder District, amending the PD GDP plan development and approving a specific implementation plan. And then for referral, items 10, 11, and 12, Legistar 67803, 66117, and 68693. To be passed on the consent agenda, agenda item 13, Legistar 68189, located at 425 Woodward Drive, 18th Alder District, consideration of major alterations to approve conditional uses for lakefront development and for accessory buildings in the suburban residential consistent 1 district exceeding 1,000 square feet of total area to allow construction of 2 additional accessory buildings on a lakefront parcel. And then to be placed on file without prejudice, agenda item 14, Legistar 68190, located at 1401 Beld Street, 13th Alder District. And on the consent agenda, agenda item 15, Legistar 68191, located at 825 West Badger Road, 14th Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a street-facing wall of Fire Station 6 to construct an addition. Agenda item 16, Legistar 68192, located at 1529 Gilson Street, 13th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the traditional employment district for general retail, bicycle sales and service, consideration of a conditional use in the traditional employment district for outdoor display, and consideration of a conditional use in the TE district for freestanding referral. Agenda item 17, Legistar 68193, and that is referral to the January 10th Plan Commission meeting at the request of the applicant. And finally, agenda item 19, Legistar 68195, located at 2402 Darwin Road, 12th Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a single-family residence. I will open the public hearing, and since there are no registrants to speak, I will close the public hearing. Is there a motion? Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes, I move approval of the consent agenda and the referrals and place on file as you've indicated.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. Thank you. Then we will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands to object, the motion passes unanimously. Then going back to our agenda, the next item is agenda item 3, Legistar 68084, adopting the South Madison Plan as a supplement to the comprehensive plan and directing staff to implement the recommendations contained in the plan. We have 2 members of staff who are going to give us an overview, Jeff Greger and Angela Porta. So, Jeff, you are on.
Thank you very much. Let me just get my screen shared here. Hopefully you're able to see the PowerPoint in front of you. Here to review the South Madison Plan and changes since our informational presentation in October. So I want to spend a little bit of time filling in the Plan Commission on how your feedback was implemented into the plan. And then spend the remainder of the time reviewing kind of the discussion items that went on at the boards, committees, and commissions as they reviewed the South Madison plan. So we'll get into it here. Just a reminder for everyone, this is the study area. We're looking at the area south of Winger Creek, generally north of the Beltline, east of Fish Hatchery Road, and west of Lake Monona. So quickly going into the items that were brought up at the October 4th informational session. The first one would be the street connection that's circled here, the Perry Street overpass. In the previous draft of the plan, it was shown as a secondary street connection. A member of the Plan Commission recommended that that be changed to a priority street connection, and that has been changed in the draft that is before you tonight for your consideration. Moving on to the next item, the Plan Commission received a letter from a member of the community expressing concern that there wasn't anything in the plan about historic preservation, and specifically the underrepresented communities survey that was just recently completed. Staff has added a historic preservation section to the past, present, future chapter. This text that's on the screen has been added. Staff worked with Heather Bailey, the preservation planner, to craft this language, and then also have included this map showing 11 of the 12 properties within South Madison. The 12th property was redacted due to the fact that the person still lives in that property, and we want to respect their privacy. So that text and the plan has been added based off of the feedback received in October. And then lastly, it was recommended by a member of the Plan Commission to add this planned off-street ped bike facility paralleling John Nolan Drive in the area that we're terming the Olin Triangle. So that connection has been added. It goes from the intersection of Olin and John Nolan all the way to the Winger Creek path. So those have been incorporated as well. And then I guess this is the last major comment from that informational meeting. Members of the commission inquired about changing the height recommendation from 3 stories to match the 5-story recommendation just to the east at the intersection of Am Street and Fish Hatchery Road. Staff has incorporated that change into the height map. The other area that was brought up was the area circled just south of the Alliant Energy Center. It was also recommended to go from 3 to 5 stories. However, in staff's opinion, the recommendation of 3 stories creates a transition into this single-family neighborhood from the 5 stories that's recommended adjacent to the Beltline. So that recommendation of 3 stories is remaining that way in the draft that's before you tonight. Getting into the boards, committees, and commission feedback, there were 3 main areas of discussion that were brought up. One having to do with the level of stress for bicycle facilities along or at the intersection of South Park and Badger Road. A member of the public brought up at Urban Design Commission as well as Board of Parks concerns about the view shed from Olin Turville Park and the 12-story recommendation in the height map. And then finally, there was a lot of discussion about the Thorstad focus area recommendation, and I'll spend the majority of my time discussing that coming up here. So just to talk about the level of stress bike facilities, this is a map showing the existing level of stress. The green colors are lower stress bike facilities on street, and the orange colors are higher level of stress. So this is existing conditions. with what's proposed in the future bike pedestrian network. This is showing how the level of stress improves. For the most part, Park Street improves to a level of stress of 3, moderate stress. It was 4 previously. A lot of these side streets that intersect with Park Street improved to a level 1. However, it was felt that maybe more could be done at the intersection of West Badger Road and South Park Street. And a member of the TPPB recommended that staff relook at those recommendations to improve them. As staff mentioned in the memo to the Plan Commission, we're not opposed to doing that. However, there is some uncertainty about what will be at the corner of Badger and Park, specifically with the transfer points. It's kind of up in the air at this moment whether or not, with the route realignment study going on, whether or not there will be a need for a transfer station in the future. If that were to go away, that would do a lot for access points onto Park Street and Badger Road, potentially access points going away, and recommendations for on-street bike facilities may change if that transfer point was not there. So it would be staff's recommendation or suggestion to add to the Land Use, Transportation, and Parks chapter a recommendation that planning staff and transportation engineering staff work together to develop and implement recommendations to improve the level of stress on the on-street bicycle facilities at that intersection at such time a development proposal is brought forth, once there's more certainty as to what will be at that corner. Moving on to the second item of discussion, it was about the view shed at Old Interval Park, as well as and the suggested 12-story max height limit on the height map. Staff put together a number of graphics to do a kind of a view shed study. So what you're looking at here is, if you were a satellite looking down, the green colors are lower elevation, the red and the orange colors are higher elevation. So you're seeing Old Interval Park here. A lot of this would be vegetative cover, tree cover. The green areas would be lower, so they're kind of ground level. And so staff cut a number of sections looking at different viewpoints to see how your view shed would be impacted from Old Interval Park. And so what you're looking on the cross section, staff used 160-foot elevation, which is taller than what a potential 12-story building would be. So from this viewpoint, anything green on this line, you would have an unobstructed view. Once it turns red, and the blue point is essentially where your view is blocked. And then anything red, you're unable to see. So like I said, staff cut a number of sections from a number of different points. And generally, it would be difficult. I'm not going to say it's impossible that you wouldn't see some buildings from different viewpoints in the park, but in general, especially in leaf-on condition, your view would be obstructed of any tall buildings. We did work with the group of individuals who raised the issue. We even cut 4 additional cross sections at points of their choosing to look at what the view shed would be. So you see 2 of them here and 2 of them here. So looking at the Sheridan for these points, and again, the sections that were cut appear that your view would be obstructed by either the grade or the vegetation. So, in staff's view, the view shed from Olin Park would not be impacted greatly, as well as is the height recommendation. Staff feels is appropriate for John Nolan Drive, being a major arterial into the city. It's also a transit corridor. That's where we typically plan for height and density. Getting into the final area of the major discussion at the BCCs is the Thorstad focus area. What you see on your screen is the focus area concept that was developed through a lot of public feedback and a number of sessions starting in June of this past year, going all the way through the September-October timeframe with the community. This is not where staff started when we presented our initial concepts to the community. The concept showed essentially all multifamily developed within the Thorstad site. We heard loud and clear from the community that that's not what is needed in South Madison. There's already enough multifamily, and what is needed is opportunities to build wealth through home ownership. And specifically, we presented them the options of home ownership, everything from single family detached to single family attached to townhomes and condos. And overwhelmingly, the response back was there needs to be opportunities for single family residential detached home ownership in South Madison. So this slide showing what the community has told us, and I do want to point out, we as staff tried to reach out to those people in the community who don't typically or who are unable to attend a typical city meeting. We set up with community partners, neighborhood action teams to try to get different segments of the population in South Madison, again, who don't typically or can't find the time to attend our meetings, so that they could provide feedback on this plan. Also hired two social practice artists to go out and also garner feedback from segments of the community who don't typically participate in city processes. So what the community told staff is happening in South Madison is displacement and gentrification are occurring today. There needs to be more owner-occupied housing, build something that people can purchase. There's been decades of neglect, redlining, and frankly, discrimination in this section of the city. Questioning why all housing has to be rental units. They're surrounded by rental units. Build affordable housing. And then, again, focus on ownership and bringing up, again, that history, legacy of housing discrimination. And the desire that they didn't want South Park Street to resemble East Washington Avenue with taller buildings and lots of density. So what does the data tell us? The data tells us that roughly 20% of the population in South Madison is ownership. Nearly 80% is renter. Compared to the city overall, it's closer to 50-50, 53% rental and 47% ownership. That comes from the American Community Survey 5-year data. Then looking at the type of building or residential in South Madison, approximately 29% of it is single family, and 67.5% is multifamily. So that almost 2/3 of where you can live in South Madison is multifamily. Again, comparing that to the city as a whole, again, it's closer to that 50-50 split, 52% single family, and 47% multifamily. As part of the South Madison plan, a market study consultant was hired, and part of what they looked at was housing demand. They used two different methodologies for estimating the number of units that could be built in South Madison or absorbed into the community over the next 20 years. For methodology one, which projected a low and a high based on a proportional share of the citywide projected growth. The low was about 924 units. The high was 1,847 units. They also used another methodology where they compared South Madison to a comparable area experiencing growth. They chose East Washington Avenue. And using that methodology, they projected about 2,260 units could be absorbed into South Madison, additional units over the next 20 years. For a little bit of perspective, the three focus area concepts that are included in the plan, kind of using the midpoint of the density ranges for each of the housing types proposed, staff computed that that would be about 2,127 units. There are other potential areas of residential development in South Madison as well, the Olin Triangle being one area. So staff estimates between another 600 to 800 units could be built in Olin Triangle and other areas within South Madison that aren't in the focus area concepts. So on the high end, that's about 2,900 additional units. Lastly, for perspective, the South Madison study area is 975 acres. The Thorstad site is 24 acres, or about just under 2.5% of the total study area. So we're looking at a fairly small area of the overall study area when we're talking about the Thorstad site. A little bit more on the data. This is looking at percentage of single-family homes by census tract. The lighter colors are smaller percentages, and the darker colors are the higher percentages. So outside of downtown, South Madison is one of the areas with a lower percentage of single-family homes as compared to the city as a whole. So going into the plan recommendation a little bit here, a little bit of what's behind it. As I said before, the initial set of concepts, this is not where we started with the Thorstad, but the initial set of three concepts proposed over 4,000 new housing units. And again, going back to the market study, that's practically double of what the market study is telling us the area can absorb. And those concepts were skewing heavily towards multifamily as the predominant form of housing. So the initial concept showed 3% single family, 97% multifamily. The set of revised concepts, the ones that are in the current draft, skew a little bit more towards single family, but again, predominant form is multifamily at 89%, 11% single family. As I mentioned before, the community directed us or recommended that we go back and revise the concept plans to show more owner-occupied single-family housing. Staff did just that. We evaluated a number of locations where this potentially could occur. We looked at larger lots and splitting those and what could be garnered out of that. And we looked at a number of different sites where we could do something similar to what's proposed on the Thorstad site. It was determined that, because to do something like this, there would need to be a significant amount of city investment, likely TIF required to make it happen. We were looking for an area that would be minimal displacement of residents or no displacement of residents, and where the city investment could likely be recouped within a 10-year period. The Thorstad site offered both of those. No displacement of residents would occur to redevelop that into residential. Minimal displacement of businesses would be needed, and the city investment would likely be able to be recouped within that 10-year period. And the Thorstad area is also adjacent to Wright Middle School as well as Bowman Field or Park, so it's ideal for development of a neighborhood. So I just want to kind of go over again the area that we're looking at is this red dashed line. I've broken down the net densities. So the net density is taking out stormwater, taking out streets, and any parkland or other open space. So for low residential, anything labeled with an A or a B, that would be the single family lots. These are 4,000 square foot lots. And then B are what we're terming cottage homes. So they would be roughly a 1,200, 1,500 square foot home that could be owned, and then the land would be owned by a condo. Low medium residential is this area C. You may ask yourself why the net density is lower than the low residential. That has to do with two factors, the minimal amount of acreage, and in this proposal, fairly generous sized units of between 2,000 and 2,400 square feet, much bigger than what you would normally associate with a townhome. And then mixed use are the D buildings at a density about just under 55 dwelling units per acre. So overall, within this red line, the net density is 16, just over, well, we'll call it 16, on just under 15 acres of net developable. The entire site, just under 24 acres, as I mentioned before. Staff did look at other areas within the city that are comparable, and we also looked at one that was similar size but different type of development. So the first site we looked at was the Royster Clark development, showing the overall net density for that area is 19. So it's a mix of single family, multifamily, and mixed use. Now, the second area was along East Washington, the former Ellis Deli site, which is being redeveloped into a mixed-use building. This area, almost 24 acres, the net density is 17. Again, a mix of single-family, multifamily, and mixed-use. The 820 Park Apartments, again, we're looking at 21 dwelling units per acre. The Allied Drive Mosaic Ridge, another city, kind of heavily city invested in project. There's single family and multifamily in this development, and the net density is 15.5. And then we looked at Union Corners, which does not, include any single family, so it's multifamily and mixed use. And that net density is working out to just under 32 dwelling units per acre. Since there was so much discussion around the Thorstad focus area and desire to see additional density because it's along a future BRT corridor, and it's so close to downtown, staff went ahead and put together an alternative concept plan that the Plan Commission may want to consider. However, it is staff's recommendation, which is in the staff report that was provided to the Commission. It is staff's recommendation that Plan Commission recommend approval of the South Madison Plan as written, with that one minor change around the low-stress bike network. But in case the Commission would like to consider this alternative, I'll just spend a little bit of time discussing what has changed or what is different than the Thorstad focus area concept. So for starters, the single family lots were reduced to 3,000 square feet, allowing for some additional lots. We went from, I believe, 50, around 50 up to 65 lots. The other thing that changed was the size of unit in the townhome areas. Those were reduced from that generous size of 2,000 to 2,400 square feet down to a 1,500 square foot townhome unit. And then townhomes were also added just to the west of the mixed-use buildings, to provide a buffer from those to the the single-family lots. So the number of townhomes, low, medium residential went from 16 units to 44. And then the final change was instead of 5-story buildings at Park Street, increase those to 8 stories. That would require a modification of the height map as well. The change would probably encompass the area that I'm circling with my cursor, going from 5 stories to 8 stories. So we would have a node of 8 stories at the north end of the study area, as well as at the Badger and Park Street area. So by increasing the height of those mixed-use buildings, essentially doubling the amount of units in those buildings. So going from 240 total units to 399, the density would increase to 26.62. This is just a table that compares all of those areas that we looked at. So the Thorstad focus area concept at 16, the alternative would be 26. And then these are the other areas that we looked at to compare the Thorstad focus area to. So how would this recommendation, or how could it be implemented, whether it's the Thorstad focus area concept or the alternative? The city, to make something like this happen, the city would need to team with a developer, a nonprofit. As I mentioned before, it would require significant city investment, likely through TIF. The city could pursue land banking of these properties. The city could then also construct the site infrastructure. Then the idea would be to turn it over to a developer or the nonprofit to construct and sell the units. And just a final few slides here. Staff also compared the area of single-family lots to other areas within the city, other neighborhoods, to kind of compare the number of lots being generated in the concept plan. So this is the Thorstad alternative at 65 lots. The original concept is 50. So we're comparing it to the Tenny Lampum neighborhood, where you could fit roughly 45. You know, if you move this little area down here, you could probably pick up another half dozen. So you could be in that neighborhood of 50. Looked at a neighborhood in the East Moreland neighborhood, roughly 18 parcels, give or take, in that same area that the Thorstad is either getting 50 or 65. Off of Raymond Road, about 34 parcels. And then in the Elderberry neighborhood on the far west side, roughly 22 or so parcels in that same area. Same size area is in the Thorstad focus area. With that, I'll conclude my presentation. Happy to answer any questions you may have or go back to a map when appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much, Greg. Jeff, we will move on to public testimony and then circle back for questions of staff. The first registrant is Tommy Hanna, District 7, Maple Grove Drive, Madison, neither support nor opposed and wishing to speak. Tommy?
Well, I'd actually prefer if Steve Scheffler was able to speak first. Is that possible?
Yeah, we can move to Steve Scheffler. Steve is at Elmwood Avenue, Middleton, neither support nor opposed and wishing to speak, representing Sketchworks Architecture. Steve, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. So members of the commission, so I appreciate the many months of hard work placed into the development. I think Greg and Angela and all the team have done a great job. And while the plan is very comprehensive and serves to mold the future of the city very well, we've discovered an area in the plan that we believe creates a disadvantage and hampers some of the growth and economic development in this district. Please know I'm not here to speak in opposition to the plan whatsoever. I'm just simply asking for a slight refinement be made specifically regarding the lands to be annexed from the town of Madison next year. I believe there could be a better development opportunity given for the lands along Badger Road, specifically in the Beltline corridor. And those are the lands from Park Street east to Rimrock Road along the Beltline. So this Beltline corridor is obviously a major gateway to the city from regions to the west and south and east. The corridor serves as a bridge between Park Street, the commerce area, and the Rimrock Road civic enterprises. These lands are able to contribute significantly to the housing needs in this area and generate great economic opportunity for its residents, strengthen aesthetic, safety, and that first impression to visitors and commuters alike around the city. In representing a property along Badger Road and Rusk Avenue, the intersection there, my clients have been in discussions with the city, the town, and county staff regarding their proposed development along this corridor. Due to significant development cost projections, we've really determined that a 6-story development would be necessary, and anything less would simply not be feasible to offset the land development and with regards to the anticipated rent projections as well. Thus risking a vacant parcel and fearing future blight as well. So we've met with planning staff, the South Madison planning staff, on a couple of occasions, and sincerely applaud their efforts. I think they've done a great job. But we've just got a couple of comments that we hope you will consider in amending this. First of all, we believe the lands from Park Street east to Rimrock should not be restricted to 5 stories and should not be measured from the bottom of the hill. Specifically, I'm talking about Knob Hill and the corner of Rusk and or the 77 Sirloin Strip property specifically. The height limits placed specifically on that land are measured from the southeast corner of that property, which is effectively the bottom of the hill and negates about 20 feet of grade change. So that is inhibiting to their development even more so.
Thank you, Steve. That concludes your available time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then we will go back to Tommy Hanna, Maple Grove Drive, Madison, neither support nor opposed and wishing to speak. Tommy, you have 3 minutes.
Hello. Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm also speaking on behalf of my own personal property here at 77 Sirloin Strip. We have met with the planning department there with Jeff and Angela. The recommendation that they've also said at my property, which I've been invested in for the last 30 years, inhibits a big development process that I've been trying to put together. And moving forward, that I'd like to see some changes affecting that, not limiting the height on that personal property of mine, and unrestricting that piece of parcel, which I sit in about 1.5 acres. So I would like to see what can be done about that to move forward in the process about that. And I know that there's proposals on the Park Street, which they clearly said, Thorstead, for example, was recommending some 8 units across the street from there, 8 stories high. On Rusk Avenue, they were proposing new developments there that can reach up to 8 stories high. And they wanted a beautiful visibility, capitalize on the visibility from the Beltline. Well, I have that, all of that, to be able to do that. I would like you to just take a look at their recommendations and see what else can be changed about that. I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Tommy. The next registrant is Simone Hanna, East Bingham Road, Milton, Wisconsin. Simone, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Yes, I am Tommy Hanna's brother, and we co-own the property at 77 Sirloin Strip. And Steve Shuffler was speaking on our behalf earlier, and we were requesting a approval for or actually a changing or recommendation of a 6-story apartment complex. I think that is going to be needed for the south side of Madison. In fact, it is needed for the south side of Madison. The town of Madison we are currently in is going to be annexed into the city in 22, 23. Next year, 22. And like Steve said, we've talked to multiple municipalities, and here we are again trying to persuade or convince or get feedback as to what we can do to implement our project. A lot of going back and forth are the issues as far as will be the height issue, and it won't make any sense to build anything less than the 6-story if we're going to spend any money. It's just the ratio won't allow it to happen, and it'd be sad not to see a new development in the town of Madison that it hasn't seen for over 50 years. I'm just going to leave it at that for right now, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. The next registrant is Don Ferber, District 15, Alice Avenue, opposed and wishing to speak. Don, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity to speak. I just have some concerns about the plan from a couple of respects. One is that we're setting climate change goals for our community, and we really have to take those seriously in terms of how we're, developing the community and the sort of dwellings and the density and so on we have. Another thing in terms of adapting to climate change is dealing with storms and runoff and having less impervious areas, and also the affordability. I know there's a desire for more family ownership, and I want to support that. But I'm not sure how much people really talk to about the trade-offs about having a single-family home versus multi-unit buildings where you can lower construction costs, you can lower energy use, you can provide more common spaces, more amenities for the same cost. And if people are really presented with all these options, I think that has to be part of the equation to look at that. We have to be reducing our energy use in these buildings, which is much easier to do with larger multi-unit buildings that have conjoined walls. And again, keep the costs down, both of the buildings and on the energy costs. That can also allow, like I say, more to reduce the amount of impervious surfaces, paved surfaces, roofing, and so on, and also provide more usable green space that also works for dealing with runoff from storms and so on. So I want to support a little bit more here with higher density, more multiple unit buildings, with shared spaces that I think are also better often for community building if people really look at it. And I think also it would be better for supporting mass transit and also local businesses by having more people in the neighborhoods. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Jeffrey Richter, Cliff Court, Wisconsin, neither support nor opposed and wishing to speak. Jeffrey, you have 3 minutes.
Chair, there's no person in attendance by that name.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Nicholas Davies, Richard Street, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Nicholas, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. So a couple of years ago, I was living on the west side, and I did take part in the Odana West Town Plan, which really reimagined the use of that land and envisioned it creating not only residential infill, but complete walkable, self-sufficient neighborhoods, including green space. And I was really impressed with how city staff carried out that plan, and it really set the groundwork for that area to evolve in a positive way in the coming years. Whereas with this plan, aside from a couple of focus areas and the mixed-use zoning along Park Street, the South Madison plan seems to be largely just copying forward the status quo. So I don't know why that is. I don't know whether it's just that this neighborhood isn't getting the same level of city resources and whatever reason there might be for that, or if staff are just taking an approach of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But doing so denies kind of the overall context that we're in, the existing economic forces, and kind of expected future growth for Madison and future sustainability goals that we need to meet. And we're talking about an area that's only a couple miles from downtown and major employers. So if we make this plan based on the assumption that people aren't going to move into this neighborhood, that's just a fantasy, right? I mean, people are going to want to move there. And the question is whether this neighborhood will have the residential capacity that it needs for the people who are going to want to move in, as well as the people who are already there. And if that's not the case, we're going to see more rising costs. We're going to see more displacement. And so, when I look at this plan with large swaths of exclusively single-family zoning, it doesn't look good. It's setting a very low capacity for the neighborhood as a whole. There are other problems that I see here because we're just copying forward the zoning of today. For instance, the Fish Hatchery Road corridor is primarily shown as mid-density residential, like it is today. There's a couple spots for commercial, like there are today, but it really doesn't allow for people in that area to have anything to walk to along that corridor. And that's what makes Fish Hatchery Road, such a dangerous place to be as a pedestrian or a cyclist, because people speed, because there's nothing to slow down or stop for, and because there's nothing worth walking for there. The plan also doesn't provide for any safe way across the Beltline at Fish Hatchery Road for people to access commercial amenities to the south. So just in general, I'm really dissatisfied with the plan as it is, and I think this is a real opportunity to reimagine, what this neighborhood could be for the people who are there now and for the people who are going to be there in the years to come. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicholas. The next registrant is Helen Kitchell, Potter Street, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Helen, you have 3 minutes.
Helen, I noticed you're on phone. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I had to switch from headphone to phones. So my primary concern is, and I have presented this information before, is about the height map along the area immediately adjacent to Olin Turville Parks. And although the plan department did a good job of trying to reach out to South Madison folks for involvement with the plan, there hasn't been a lot of outreach about the height map. It was proposed kind of after all of that public outreach period. And the biggest concern is 12-story buildings immediately adjacent to Olin Turville Parks. I've explained the bird strikes and the views from the viewshed and the users' compromise in the use of the park. One of the big pieces is, although the park department, the planning department did those viewshed maps are conceptually only. They have not been ground truthed. And at least 2 of the sites that indicate that you wouldn't be able to see a 12-story building, you can see the existing Sheridan from already. So I think that those maps need to be ground truthed before they're taken as being accurate at this point in time. And also, many of the maps were pointing towards the Olin Turville Triangle, which was not of direct concern. There was a petition provided or submitted that for people concerned about the 12-story buildings immediately adjacent to the parks, not the Olin Turville Triangle, which is proposed for mixed-use density, whereas the area along the John Nolan corridor adjacent to the parks is indicated as employment. It's not going to be housing by any means. So the biggest concern was simply that the concern that that height of those buildings would compromise the use of the parks, and that those 2 parks are actually very much gateways to the downtown and very much enjoyed as natural gems of the park. So that was primarily the concern I wanted to bring to the attention of the Planning Commission, was the petition for people that were concerned about the parks and the use of those parks and the 12-story buildings immediately proposed adjacent, and with the hope that the height on those buildings could be reduced adjacent to the parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. The next registrant is Charles McCall, Elmwood Avenue, Middleton. Neither support nor oppose, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions, representing Tommy and Simon Hanna, owners of property at 77 Sirloin Strip. And then
Chair Zellers?
Yes.
Excuse me, we just had one late registrant that I wanted to mention.
Okay.
Wishing to speak. Isidore Knox Jr. of Baird Street in support, wishing to speak.
Okay, very good. Isidore, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I guess I want to support the draft plan proposal. I did want to comment that I've lived in this neighborhood for over 30 years. I'm a little concerned about the increased density, particularly in the alternative plan. I've always believed that maintaining a mixture of different home ownership options are best for neighborhoods. But like the example that was presented, talking about 50 units versus 65 units, I would much rather support the 50 units than adding that increased density. And I realize that the city has a vacancy rate problem, but I've always felt that mixed income, scattered site housing is best for all neighborhoods because it's inclusive of all income groups. So I think they've done a good job basically on this general plan. I'm just concerned about the increased density that is starting to occur, particularly coming up Park Street, as it's moving further south, more apartments, more density, and that I think we're gonna end up heading to a problem that the city has experienced for years, when those apartments density become problems. So that's my general comments.
Thank you. We have 2 other registrants, but they do not wish to speak and they are not available to answer questions. Commissioners, do you have any questions of any of our registrants? Commissioner Shepard.
Just 2 questions for Jeff. One having to do with the park.
Excuse me, are you asking a question of registrants or staff?
Oh, I'm sorry, staff.
Okay, let's hold off on that and make sure we don't have any. No, that's okay. Make sure we don't have any question of registrants first. Any questions of any of our registrants? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and we will move on to questions of staff. So Commissioner Shepard, go ahead.
All right. 2 questions for Jeff. One dealing with the issue of the building heights, and the second with housing, single family housing. One in terms of the building height. Is it necessary to get any feedback or comment from parks on, again, sort of building height, what they may think of this? And then the second question having to do with, it was mentioned about, once again, making sure that we were environmentally sound and safe and everything, but also some pushback regarding single family homes. What can we do if this plan moves forward? Is there an opportunity to make sure that any single family housing is green housing? Can we really sort of push the envelope here in terms of, and I understand the costs that come with single family homes, but to make sure any single family homes are, again, really take advantage of new green technology. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So as far as, do we need to run this by Parks Department? as far as the height recommendation along Owen Turbo Park, we presented to the Board of Park Commissioners last Wednesday. For the most that board recommended approval of the plan without changes. There was one commissioner who voted no, based off of the height recommendation, but the remainder of the Board of Parks commissioners voted yes. We've worked with park staff throughout this process to develop the plan. They have not expressed any concerns as far as the views in or out of the park being obstructed by 12-story buildings. So I hope that answers that portion of the question. As far as green building and single-family residential, you know, I get the argument that it's easier to go green when you're building a bigger building versus a single-family home. However, single-family homes can also be built energy efficient. And I would argue, you know, that the Thorstad site, as I mentioned, is going to require city investment. When the city gets involved in a project, especially if we own the land and we team with a developer or a nonprofit, we can dictate kind of what we expect to see on that property. And energy efficiency could be one of those things that's included that would be required for development. Given my knowledge of the mayor's desire for energy efficiency, I would expect that would be, if a development and the city was involved in that development, that would be likely a requirement.
All right. Thank you.
Did that answer your questions, Commissioner?
Yes. Thank
you. Great. Thank you. Commissioner Spencer.
Thank you. I had a question for Jeff. We heard from a couple speakers and saw some comments that came in that there wasn't a lot of information to the community portrayed about changes in the height map. Can you talk about how, you know, any efforts made for more outreach? I know your staff did a lot of great outreach in developing the plan, but you know, any information that was conveyed after changes in the height map, I just wanted to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. So throughout this process, we've kind of taken it step by step. We started with a number of listening sessions about what the community would like to see, what needs fixing, that sort of stuff. Then we moved on to draft strategies and recommendations. And we moved and held, at every step of the way, we held a series of public input sessions on each of the pieces. The next step were these focus area concepts. And then the final step was kind of putting it all together into the final plan document, including these supplemental maps, including the height map, the future land use map, that sort of stuff. For that final phase, I believe we started that public input session in September. We had 5 opportunities for the public to weigh in. We held 2 online virtual community input sessions. We held an event in Penn Park in person. We're trying to be very safe with COVID, so we did it outdoors. And then we also offered 2 opportunities to meet with a planner at the library on South Park Street. And then we also developed a survey for those who were not comfortable meeting in person or able to meet virtually online to submit feedback on the plan. And that comment period was open for 3 weeks prior to then finalizing all of the recommendations. We also did get a request from members of the Bay Creek neighborhood to meet with us. And we said we would do that. We'd come to one of their neighborhood meetings. Unfortunately, at the last minute, it was decided that that wasn't going to work. So we did not have that opportunity to meet with them to discuss. At that time, it was the Olin Triangle, but I'm sure the height recommendations along John Nolan may have also been a potential topic. So as staff, you know, we feel like every step of the way we offered opportunities for feedback. Just in 2021, when we restarted this planning effort after the COVID break, starting in March through October, we held 14 public meetings in a span of about 6 or 7 months. And so for each section of the plan that we worked on, there were at least 2, if not more than 2, opportunities for the public to weigh in.
Thank you, Jeff. Did that answer your question, Commissioner Spencer?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up. And I know you met with a number of board and commissions between the Plan Commission meeting in October and then today. Were there other public information meetings or, public comment periods between that time?
So after we, so before we submitted the plan for adoption, we had an informational meeting in October with the Plan Commission on the 4th. We also gave an informational presentation to the Transportation Policy and Planning Board. Then we submitted the plan for adoption, and we've since through the adoption process visited 7 boards, committees, and commissions. So the CDA, CDBG, Parks, TPBB, I'm missing a few. Economic Development, Housing Strategy. I may have missed one in there. I apologize. But so that process as well has all been open to the public and open for public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Spencer. Commissioner Cantrell.
Yeah, my question is on the, we had a couple speakers on the 77 strip property. They apparently are requesting additional stories there, 6 stories versus what the planning staff has is 5 stories. And I guess my question is, how did staff settle on like 5 stories? Is there a construction process different for a 5-story building versus a 6-story building? Can staff address that property specifically, and also talk about the story information that they show? We have 2-story buildings. Obviously, those are low density, single family. 3 stories, maybe townhouses. 5 stories, 8 and 12. But why 5, not 6? So could you talk about that specific question?
Sure. So the site we're looking at is, I'm circling with my cursor here, 77 Sterling Strip. Directly behind it is the Madison Mobile Home Park. There is significant grade change from the frontage road, West Badger, to the top of the property. The concern, I guess addressing the height, there's a concern that if you measure the height from the top of the hill, you're going to have a building that's towering over this single family mobile home park, and potentially shading units to the west. And so as part of this recommendation, we wanted to be cognizant of the surroundings of the area. We went in so far as to make the recommendation of where to measure the height from, given that elevation change, to try to mitigate a building towering over the mobile home park, and again, affecting it via shade and that sort of stuff. Also, that same recommendation on where to measure the height applies to the property directly to the east. That's also a slope property and directly adjacent to the mobile home park. I think I might throw it to my colleague Tim Parks to maybe speak about the change in method of construction. I always get hung up whether it's 4 stories or 5 stories where that changes. So Tim, I don't know if you want to maybe enlighten us on that piece.
Tim?
Sure, I can try. There's basically a cutoff with the amount that you can build in wood frame, aka stick build, at 4 stories. And the amount of concrete construction that you can put under that 4 stories of stick varies. And it gets more expensive the more concrete podium you bring out of the ground before you do the stick build. The more expensive it can become. That wasn't really the genesis of our recommendation. It was really more what Jeff indicated in terms of the relationship between the top of the hill and the frontage road, with the significant grades present, particularly at the southeast corner of the Hookah Lounge property. And then just how much height we should put and where we should start counting the height.
So what you're saying is because of the slope there, they are probably limited to a 3-story building, something like that, rather than a 5-story building because of the if you measure from where the road is, Badger, there's at least 20 feet or so up to the top of the hill. Is that the thinking there?
That's the thrust of it, because both that site and the site to the east, which is owned by a Zimbrick affiliated concern and has trucks parked on it as well as 1 or 2 billboards. Both of those sites slope from northwest to southeast, so the low points are at their southeastern corners. And so, where you start counting the 5-story height, when you have anywhere between 15 and potentially 25 feet of grade change across the sites, you get a dramatically different experience. So if you put a 6-story building at the top of the hill on which the Hookah Lounge sits, it's going to be probably closer to at least 8 stories, possibly 9 stories in height, measured from that southeastern corner adjacent to Badger Road. And that was a concern to us given the overwhelmingly low-rise character of the mobile home court that surrounds it. And so we're not opposed to a 5-story building, but starting it at the top of the hill versus at the bottom of the hill and backing it into the mobile home park, you'll get a dramatically different outcome adjacent to the mobile home park. So that was where we were coming from for both the Hookah Lounge and the adjacent Zimbrick properties.
I also have so apparently the getting out to the number of stories and the type of construction. It looks like a 4-story is stick-built wood frame, and if you go over typically over 4 stories, then it's more of a podium with stories above. In my opinion, unless other commission members or you have other opinions, I'm sure you do, it doesn't seem very cost effective to build a 5-story building just for one additional height. And we're restricting that universally across this plan area. So I guess I'm just thinking that maybe that 5-story should be 6 stories rather than a 5-story, especially on Park Street. So, and I guess I'd like staff to talk about that. So, Tim, could you talk about that?
I'd be happy to, and maybe others on the South Madison team would care to join in. The Plan Commission sees a great many 5-story buildings. I don't think that you go 2 meetings in a row without approving at least one. It's a very common form of construction, 4/1. Sometimes it's 4/2. Okay. It varies. We were responding with the 5-story recommendation along portions of Park Street and on this site to concerns that we heard very early on about not wanting to create the same character of development on the South Park Street corridor that you see on big chunks of the East Washington corridor. And so the 5-story, we feel, is a good middle ground to allow for additional development to occur on Park Street. Certainly, when you look at what's along Park Street on many of the properties where 5-story height is recommended, you see 1- and 2-story buildings. There's going to be quite a bit more intensity of development as a result of those 5-story buildings getting built, if indeed up to 5-story buildings are ultimately proposed. So we feel like it meets the desire to allow for additional development on Park Street while addressing a concern that we heard very, very early on, over 2 years ago, in fact, that they don't want the same scale of development that you see along significant parts of East Washington. And I'll stop there and see if anybody else wants to join in.
Just one follow-up. Refresh my memory, are the buildings that we're seeing along West Washington and Park Street up by West Washington, are those 5 stories? I think they may be, but
it runs the gamut. On the east side of Park Street, you see typically lower rise buildings adjacent to the low density housing immediately to the east. So, for example, I believe it was the 1200 block, maybe the 1100 block on the east side, the former Jade Garden site. That's a 3-story. But almost sort of kitty corner in the 1200 block, you have a 5-story building that's being finished at 1224. I believe that's 5 stories. The redevelopment of the Truman Olson site at 1402 South Park Street is a combination of 5 and 6 stories. The Lanes Bakery redevelopment is a very tall 6-story building on the west side of Park Street, likewise across Drake Street from it on the former Ideal Auto Body site. You have 6 and it steps down to 3 as it goes west along Drake Street. So you get a real mix, and it's in that 3 to 6 story range.
It looks like Heather has something she would like to add. Heather?
Sure. I wanted to add a couple comparisons between South Park Street and East Washington that I think are important for the Plan Commission to recognize. Along South Park Street, we're dealing with much shallower lots than the full block redevelopment opportunities along East Washington Avenue. And so where we see the 12 and 14-story buildings along East Washington Avenue, those are full block, 4-acre redevelopments that have a great deal of space, including a public street between them and the nearest properties. And so there's a lot more room there to really step that building down and provide solar access to nearby properties. I think along South Park Street, yes, we have a lot of 5-story, 3 to 5, 3 to 6-story buildings coming up, but baked into our zoning code and often before you as a plan commission are the issues with regard to that transition to existing properties next to them. And along South Park Street, we're just dealing with a different environment of much shallower sites. We still want to see as much intensity as is practical along this corridor, but I think we wouldn't really envision 12, 14-story buildings right along South Park Street, in part due to that shallow lot, the prevalence of shallower lots.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the comments, Steph.
Did you have any further questions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. Just one question that follows up well from Commissioner Cantrell's comments. I believe it's shown as 5 stories at Wingra Drive, right next to the first area. Yes, right there. If I recall correctly from driving that during some rainstorms, there tends to be flooding. That's a low-lying area. Is that correct?
is.
Is that something that you looked at with the plan? Yes.
Not directly with this recommendation for height, but it is along the creek. So it is a lower area. Part of the Thorstad concept would be to create a linear parkway here. That could be a place where we could pick up space to do stormwater mitigation to potentially mitigate some flooding, but if it happens over there.
Yeah, I just recalled driving through some flooded streets there a few times, but why I was asking was that is an instance, as we were just talking about it, where I could see a 4/2 building being appropriate because you would not want to go underground for parking. So that's an area where I would be supportive of looking at a 6-story height limit instead of 5, just thinking of the site conditions. I guess that's more of a comment than question. Sorry, but half question, half comment. That's all I have for right now. Thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Solheim. Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question, sort of following up on that same 5-story, 6-story thing. If we approve this plan as it's shown 5-story and a developer comes in with a proposal for 6 stories and perhaps designs it in a way that's sensitive to the site or sensitive to the adjacent site, we would still be able to approve that? I mean, this is not going to set an absolute limit, is it? That's one question, and I have a follow-up question.
I'm going to refer that to Tim, as that's kind of his area of expertise.
I am going to pause for, well, no, I think she took her hand down. Okay, it'll be me. So it's a plan recommendation. It's not a zoning regulation. Places where that height recommendation would come into play, there's a few of them. One of the recommendations that we're putting forward in the plan is to change the guidance in Urban Design District 7, which sets minimum and maximum building heights in the South Park Street corridor, all the way from, I think from Regent Street. Yes, Regent Street, all the way down to the Beld line. And so one of the things that we're proposing is to change UDD 7 so that the guidance for south of Winger Creek is consistent with what the South Madison plan is putting forward. So that would manifest itself primarily at the Urban Design Commission when new developments were going for Urban Design Commission approval. And there would be language, hopefully in Urban Design District 7, that would be consistent with what we're putting forward in the South Madison plan. So that would be where that plan recommendation could become a restriction. It's also for the Plan Commission, if there were zoning map amendments proposed that would call for a district that would allow a height taller than what perhaps the South Madison plan is recommending, that the Plan Commission would give that consideration whether or not the zoning district and any known proposed development is consistent with the South Madison plan. And then the next thing would be, and this would probably be the most common request to come before the Plan Commission, would be any projects that require conditional use approval, in which case the Plan Commission is asked to give due consideration to the recommendations in adopted plans. That's not a limitation as to what the Plan Commission can approve. The Plan Commission can give due consideration to a plan that recommends a maximum of 5 stories and still find that a 6-story building meets the applicable standards and should be approved. One particular place where it might become a little more germane is if you have a property that has a conditional use above a certain number of stories and or feet. So in the TSS district, for example, there is an allowable height of 3 stories and 40 feet above 3 stories and 40 feet, you have to get a conditional use for the additional height. So if you have a 4-story, 52-foot tall building, the additional story and 12 feet of additional height would require Plan Commission approval as a conditional use. There is a conditional use standard. I believe it's number 12 in the zoning code. So please consult your scorecard for tonight's standards for approval. And note that there is a conditional use standard for requests for additional height, in which case consistency with a plan recommendation is one of the considerations in whether or not the Plan Commission would grant additional height. But there are other facets or components within that particular standard that talk about shadows, public interest, things like that. So that would be one instance where due consideration would be perhaps more amplified, would be those conditional use requests for additional height.
Thank you, Tim. Did you have any follow-ups, Commissioner Fernandez?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks very much for that, because just having some flexibility makes me much more comfortable with this plan, because this site clearly has unusual characteristics, and if it turned out that it really was limiting them to 3 stories and that was economically not viable, I would like there to be single site review if necessary in the future. And it sounds like we have that. We just have a high bar that we need to respect this plan, and that works for me. The other question, though, is about single family residential. What other tools might we have to encourage home ownership, investment, wealth building without the drawbacks of single-family residential? Why not, a 2-family duplex, or what other forms are out there that might accomplish this? Because if that becomes a really desirable area, you could even put single-family homes in there, and they're still going to be expensive. They're not really going to serve the purpose. What other forms might better serve that purpose of wealth building and home ownership while maintaining density and maintaining environmental sustainability goals?
Jeff, is that something that you would be taking, or?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll give it a first shot, and then my colleagues can chime in if I did a horrible job. First, I want to reiterate what we heard from the community. When staff put these concept plans together, we offered a wide variety of different housing types for them to review and respond to. Everything from single-family detached to townhomes, row homes, condos. Condos could be many forms. It could be like the cottage homes that are in the concept plan. It could be a building like you might see downtown, that resembles more of an apartment building, but it's a condo, it's home ownership. Overwhelmingly, the response from the community was the desire for that ability to have single-family detached opportunities in South Madison, because of the fact that there is so much multifamily already in South Madison. If you want to stay in South Madison and have ownership, have the ability to build wealth, there just isn't that ability to buy a single family home like there is other places within the city. With that said, the concept plans, like the Thorstad focus area, still offers a variety of housing types. It starts at that single family residential, responding to what we heard from the community, but it also offers that the cottage homes and the townhomes and row homes. And it's not to say those mixed-use buildings couldn't be condos. Doesn't mean they have to be apartment buildings. The concept plan offers that variety. And with any concept plan, that's kind of a starting point. The mix and the percentage of each type, that's somewhat flexible in this plan. There's going to need to be a whole separate process to plan out. I'm just keep picking on the Thorstad, but any of these focus area concept plans, there's going to need to be a next step where all of the details need to be worked out. The mix, the type of units. So just because the concept plan shows 65 single-family lots at 3,000 square feet, when the rubber meets the road, those number of lots could be decreased, but the size could be increased. We could get far more townhomes. We could get more cottage homes. So there is, I guess the point I want to make is there is flexibility in there to mix and match the housing types. And intentionally, we put a mix of housing types in the plan to allow for that adjustment over time. Because it may be, a few years before anything happens on the Thorstad site, and market conditions may change and may dictate more of one type and less of the other. I don't know if anybody else on the team wants to weigh in on that.
Heather.
I think I just want to add that, as Jeff's mentioning, the concept plan looks overly detailed, but it need not be taken as detailed as it's shown, if that makes sense. That we expect it to flex over time. And honestly, with regard to ownership versus renter, only if the city's involved will we really have a say in that piece. At all of our plans across the city, most of them are laying the groundwork for, a framework for development largely by the private sector. And we have no say in whether they're building homes, apartments for home ownership or for renters. There's nothing that the city does about that. Anyone can own their single family home and decide to rent it out, for instance. But if the city is involved, in this case, we think that we as a city would need to be, then we can have more control over not only whether it's, owner occupied or rented, but also those price points, sustainability features, things like that. All of those things come with subsidy, but only if the city is really involved and in the driver's seat will we really have control over those types of details.
Thank you, Heather. Commissioner Fernandez, does that answer your question?
I guess it did, but yeah, I was really...
Your microphone is having a problem again, Commissioner.
Well, that's timely then, because I'm done.
Oh, okay. Well, if you want to speak up, then we will try to listen. Okay, you're finished?
I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cantrell.
I think that Commissioner Fernandez raises a good point, though. We're showing some single-family homes in that area, and I understand that's what a majority of the individuals in the plan area would like to see. I think a lot of people would like to live in a single-family house, but even if those are constructed in that very desirable inner city area, new homes, which is a little bit unusual, I think the first ownership will be beneficial, and then when they sell it, unless the city can restrict the sell price, are going to make out and be the wealth building people, and the next individuals and the next individuals will have to pay a higher price for those homes. So I guess I originally thought that the lower density in that area was appropriate, but now I'm thinking that some of the other comments that we've received saying that this is a very desirable, and people want to live in this area, and it's very close to bike lanes and bus routes, and north of Winger Creek is going to be a lot of new commercial development when those large sites are redeveloped, and along Park Street. So additional density, I think, is appropriate. And I guess I haven't phrased my question, I guess, but I am giving ammunition to Commissioner Fernandez's point. That I think that we need to consider some additional density, and I think that staff has that the plan, the alternate plan that is proposed moves in that direction, and I think that that is something I think is going in the right direction at this point in time. So anyway, thanks for listening to my
Question.
question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions of staff from commissioners? If there are not, I want to move to Alder Evers and ask if he has questions of staff or questions of staff. Yes? Okay. Alder Evers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I'll do my best to follow up with Commissioner Fernandez and try to put Commissioner Cantrell's comments into a form of a question. I think that in the slide that you showed about neighborhood comments that were made during the engagement process, one was stop gentrification and build affordable housing. So the question is, what thought and consideration have you given, and this goes to Jeff, to maintaining affordability over the long term? Because as Commissioner Cantrell suggested, and you have suggested, this all would require a major city investment to get people onto the ladder of ownership, subsidize the initial purchase. But there's nothing to keep gentrification from taking place. In fact, and since what you're saying by building that home ownership will build wealth, you're saying gentrification is okay if you can get on the train. And so you would want that acceleration of housing values. But that then you're not building affordable housing, at least not in any permanent sense. So again, to phrase the question, what thought have you given to maintaining affordability over the long term?
Sure. So in the housing chapter, we discuss a number of ideas. One I'll bring up is a community land trust. Before I talk about that, though, I also want to say I think it's going to depend on who the city partners with. You know, if the Thorstad site becomes a city project, as I mentioned before, the city's in control of kind of the program of what's expected here. So one, it'll be who we partner with, whether it's the Urban League or the CDA or some other entity that could, require, some of these units could be affordable, similar to, so there may be needed additional city subsidies like the Affordable Housing Fund to get, affordable credits, and then the unit must stay affordable for the next 30 years or whatever it is. So there's the partnership. There's also, one of the ideas or one of the suggestions to maintain affordability is a community land trust. Not saying the entire Thorstad site would need to be under that community land trust, but perhaps a portion of it. Perhaps it's the single family lots, or maybe it's the cottage homes. But that would be another mechanism where we could maintain that affordability for the longer haul. Kirsty may have something else to add.
Any other? Yes. Christy Latch. I unmuted you. Did you mute yourself again? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I apologize. I did mute myself again. I just wanted to point out that in the housing chapter, in addition to Jeff's comments, we also have a recommendation about increasing financial support for development that uses non-traditional financing structures. So this is recommendation 2G in the housing chapter. So that would be different types of financing structures such as shared equity mortgages, limited equity housing cooperatives, splitting appreciated values, and then the community land trust. So all of those are types of financing structures that help to keep properties affordable over time. And that could be something that if the city does get ownership and uses land banking for the Thorstad site or any other site, we could include in an RFP to keep those properties more affordable over time. And there's an explanation of what each of those things mean in the plan.
Thank you, Kirsty. Did that do what you expected it to do, Alder Evers, or did you have anything else that you wanted to ask?
I'll try to, thank you. But just a quick, yeah, and I appreciate that because we can't be dipping into the Affordable Housing Fund with each iteration of sale and each generation of successive buyers if you're emphasizing personal home ownership. So it has to be some kind of market intervention or some kind of format like a community land trust that's non-traditional. And that's the issue, is that affordability and home ownership don't always go hand in hand. But I do have a second question about the definition of a cottage home. You mentioned cottage homes around 1,300 square feet. I live in a bungalow on Keyes Avenue in Dungeon Monroe in a home that's a 3-bedroom home that's 1,300 square feet. And it doesn't feel like it would be affordable if you built something like this in this area. So unless it's significantly subsidized, I think, again, the long-term affordability of it is going to be in question. So again, how do you define a cottage home? It doesn't feel like a small home at 1,300 square feet.
Yeah, I mean, 1,300 is, a number that's thrown out there. As I mentioned before, there's details that need to be worked out. Perhaps they're smaller. Perhaps they're 900 to 1,000 square feet. It's trying to thread the needle of being able to house a family, have more than 1 or 2 bedrooms so that you could raise a family there, and weighing the affordability of it. Tim, looks like you want to add something.
Tim?
Yeah, I would just add again that we're trying to illustrate different types of housing are possible in that focus area. Not the specific size of homes. The idea with the cottage homes would be to provide something like we see in more greenfield suburban areas of the city. Single family detached housing on other than fee simple lots might be something like a condominium form of ownership where you have a detached dwelling. Maybe they would be attached with a common wall. Maybe they would not. But that there would be an association that would be responsible for the areas exterior to these buildings. So we're illustrating different types of housing: townhouses, single-family detached in a association form, single-family detached on fee simple lots. Different styles of housing, probably different sizes of units. If the entire focus area came to fruition, I'm sure it would take a number of years. There would be some evolution or ebbing and flowing in the housing market that would inform exactly what gets built, where, and when. So again, just really wanting to emphasize that we're trying to show fits for what could happen in the focus area while recognizing that there's going to be a lot more detail that's going to occur if the plan gets approved. And as we move forward into the various stages of implementation, that we will get into details at a much finer grain, and that those details will probably change as we go through what will probably be a multi-year, multi-party implementation process.
Thank you, Tim. I don't see any other raised hands for questions, so I would be looking for a motion, and then we will be discussing. Is there a motion? Commissioner Cantrell.
I just saw that Alder Carter had a question, I think. Or do you want a motion, or do you want to?
Well, if she has a question, and then we can take the question, but discussion after the motion. Did you have a question, Alder Carter?
I was, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so before I start talking, I want to apologize for my dog in case he starts barking. I wanted to make a comment at the appropriate time, but not a question.
Okay, thank you. We will definitely get back to you. Thank you.
Okay. I will move up. approval of the South Madison plan.
Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Lemmer. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Commissioner Cantrell?
Yes, and I would like to, I guess, make one amendment as we received, I think, something from Alder Heck regarding the Thorsted site, or it was, and it was regarding the Winger Creek area, the Thorsted site, and I think that I would like to incorporate that into my motion. I think all the commission members received that in an email.
Yes, we did. Did you, let me see, I think I've got it here. Did you want to read it into the record, Commissioner Cantrell?
Yes, let's see. It says,
good. Okay, perfect. Very good. Okay.
This is in the yellow is the additional wording, I think, that Alder Heck has recommended. Well, some single-family detached residences are desirable, and this is referring to the Thorsted site. The proximity of the expected north-south BRT line on South Park Street, combined with the emerging recognition that single-family detached residents are responsible for excessive carbon emissions, often do not provide sufficient density to provide public transit, and could require substantial public financial resources for successful ownership models. Should allow for considerable flexibility in the Thorsted focus areas, planned housing types and densities, particularly in those areas slated for single-family detached residences in Area C in Figure 4.
So you're proposing that as an amendment?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that? Seconded by Commissioner Hagenow. Is there discussion of the, did you want to comment on that amendment, your motion, Commissioner Cantrell?
I think, why don't we have Alder Heck comment on that?
Sounds good. Alder Heck.
Thank you. I just wanted also to recognize that there was a slight addition to the email that I sent that struck out several words that was just above the yellow. Maybe Tim could share that again. Yeah, now he has it highlighted in blue.
So Commissioner Cantrell, did you intend for that to be included in your amendment motion?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to your amendment proposal, Alder Heck?
I do. Thank you. I'm really, I think, trying to put just a little bit of meat behind something that we heard from staff a couple of times this evening. We've heard that the plan is just that, and that it can evolve, and that depending upon market conditions, depending upon options that the city may pursue for different levels of involvement in the project, that a great deal about the plan can change over time. Some of this may not be implemented for more than a decade. I hope sooner, though. And so what I'm doing is just providing just a little more meat to that, and recognizing that yes, this could change, although single-family detached dwellings are just fine for now, and hopefully things will play out as the community wants them. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Heck. Alder Lemmer, did you wish to speak to the amendment?
Thank you. I was hoping to get some clarification on the impact of the amendment. I think Alder Heck just clarified it, but just to make sure that I absolutely understand the impact, I think it's really important to stick with the original plan and the original plan map. I think it's disrespectful to the voices of the community who have been engaged throughout this process to not support that. So I just wanted to make sure that this amendment would not impact the map and the what the plans are for the Thorstead area.
So Jeff or Heather or Tim, did you want to maybe speak to that, please, just to confirm?
I think if that's the intent of the motion, then that's how we would proceed to the council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other comments or discussion related to the amendment? Yes. Commissioner Cantrell.
Well, I was hoping that the amendment would provide additional flexibility and potentially additional density. And I think that was the intent of Alder Heck. And the concept plan that showed single family with denser lots of 3,000 square feet versus 4,000 square feet, as the original plan had, is more what I was hoping. And in addition, maybe those are duplexes. Owner-occupied duplexes are still an owner-occupied dwelling. So the flexibility that I was hoping in that amendment would provide staff and future Plan Commission members, years from now, would be for increased density, housing types, owner-occupied potentially housing types, but a different level of density that I think reflects the wishes of the community members that have provided input, but also the realization that we need housing, and this is an area that we would like to see it in. So that's at least, and if that's not what other commission members think, maybe we should have a vote on the amendment, and maybe Alder Heck can further explain what he was thinking when he made it, or I made it and he wrote it.
Alder Heck, could you clarify?
I could. I think what Commissioner Cantrell is stating is exactly my intent, but I also want to respect what the community was asking for. And I think that the possibility exists that exactly what is on that map that we've been looking at, the original map, may prove not to be feasible or realistic, particularly from a financial sense. And I think related to some of the things that Alder Evers discussed, gentrification and such, that, the city may need to explore options. And I just wanted to provide some substance for that so that future plan commissions, as you mentioned, will have a little something to go off of if it doesn't match the map exactly. And I don't think it's apt to. And I think staff reiterated that rarely do we follow the maps exactly. I would hope too that if it does require more density to make some aspects of this project feasible, that this text change would also provide some flexibility to make that possible. But again, it may be that there could be a path forward for some of exactly what's been discussed by the community and depicted in the map. But this just provides flexibility, I think, and some ammunition, I guess, if other proposals are come forward that are slightly different. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Is that the intent that you had to Commissioner Cantrell?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there further discussion of the amendment? Seeing none, we will come to a vote on the amendment. And I will assume unanimous consent on the amendment unless I see a raised hand to object. There is a raised hand to object. So Alder Lemmer will be counted as voting against the amendment. Thank you.
I understand the intent. I just,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And now we will come back to Alder Carter.
Is it time for me to make a comment?
It is. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
About the main motion as amended, please. Any comments you have.
Correct. Thank you. I just want to take you down a path of that repetition. Every time we have a community public gathering on a project in South Madison, I'll go back to the South Madison Plan of 2005. We get the community to come in, they express what they want, what they need, what they desire. And as it goes through the process, and as it gets voted, it turns out to be something totally different. One of the comments was when we first started this process was, why should we come? And the answer was, this time is going to be different. And what I see is that this time is not different. This is a plan. And we can get into the weeds and say who's going to buy this lot, who's going to build this apartment, who's going to go into this commercial space. But the bottom line is this is a vision. If the Thorstad property, and I'm going to use that, it's been talked about most of the night, is never sold, there's never going to be a house there. There's never going to be an apartment there. If we look up and it's another car lot, it's never going to be a house there. There's never going to be an apartment there. I think it's important that the community in South Madison gets recognized for what they desire, what they feel they want. I don't think anyone said anything about a duplex. I think people really want an area that is planned, that they can enjoy the Wingra Creek and the canoes and the kayaks that go down there, that they can sit and go to several little commercial spaces. Because right now, when you look at Park Street, there's clusters, but you have to drive to each cluster. And it would be nice to have something comprehensive designed for South Madison. And I support the original plan, and I'm sure you can tell. But historically, and going forward, we have to think about the area. And this area has been neglected, not only by the city, but over and over by the Common Council, by deciding to go in a different direction for the good of you, because we know better. And at one point, and hopefully not too late, we will sit back and say, what do you need? How can we help you? And not say, you deserve it, but we're going in this direction. Or at least you got that. At least you got this. I think at some point, we have to roll up our sleeves and make it work. Thank you.
I think you're recognizing me, Chair Zellers. You're muted.
Yes, you're right. Alder Foster.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you all for the thoughtful consideration. I really appreciated hearing a number of the comments from Commissioners Fernandez, Cantrell, some others. I raised concerns as a member of the Transportation Policy and Planning Board about what I saw was very low densities on this doorstep site. And I wanted to share a couple things that I think are really critical. One is when we had one of our first presentations from the consultants that are doing the network redesign study, the complete overhaul of our transit system. And one of the first things they told us is we can't fix your poor land use decisions of the past. The way that the transit works, it's a geometry, it's math. And if you put a bunch of people in faraway places, we are never going to be able to serve them with high quality transit at a reasonable cost. And I was really interested in the discussion last week about transit-oriented development. And one of the questions I raised there was around considering some minimum densities. The reason I raised that is because I think it's really critical that we understand transit as a fixed commodity. I hope that we'll continue to be able to expand that system into the future, but we are always going to be constrained. Even if we get a regional transit authority someday, all the Dane County pitches in, and we can really, really continue to expand this, we are always going to be stuck getting high capacity lines to a minority of places. And what that means from a transportation and land use perspective is that we have to take full advantage of those locations where we're committing to have that high capacity transit. It's not just that we perhaps should allow some additional density in those areas, but that is where we're going to be able to serve with high capacity transit, the downtown area and along these high capacity routes like South Park Street. So from that perspective alone, I think it's really critical that we don't miss an opportunity to be able to provide high quality housing with high quality transit access, because that also is a key to affordability when you consider both the housing costs and the transportation costs. And to be able to have an affordable housing where you also don't necessarily need to own a car, that's true affordability. And it's something that we should not take for granted, because putting a large building at the end of Milwaukee Street past the interstate or on the far southwest side, we are always going to struggle serving that with high quality transit. I appreciate the amendment from Alder Heck and certainly support that. I wanted to just mention two other things for consideration. Number one, I do think that the alternative gets us closer to something like transit-oriented development. It's still predominantly low density and single family detached, but at least it gets the dwelling units per acre up into the range of what we would expect to see and need to see for functional transit-oriented development. So I would ask you to consider moving that forward. And the other thing that I think is worth considering is that there's the really significant amount of low density residential. I think that we could consider changing that to low medium residential, which, as I understand it, would still allow single family detached, but essentially it would also allow single family attached, so row houses, townhomes. And I think in the spirit of flexibility, that would be a positive change that would still be consistent with either the original or the alternate plan that was put forward by staff. And I think just give, at a practical level, give more flexibility for future development. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Foster. Commissioner Shepard.
Just two quick points. One, I would ask that staff make sure to document the city's outreach to all the different interests and communities because even this evening, we've already heard some differences about sort of when meetings took place or when information was shared with the public. I think it's important to make sure that a good record of that is taken. And the second point is, this is just a general comment in terms of transportation and the BRT, and I support BRT and that sort. But I think it's important to remember that transportation serves people. It's not the other way around. And I'm sure, again, there's always going to be some flexibility there. But I think the tail shouldn't wag the dog, as they say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I support the plan as is, not the alternative version. Honestly, I was a little hesitant on the amendment, but I do support acknowledging that some flexibility is likely needed due to primarily financial considerations, but also transportation. This area is already really skewed more towards rental and multifamily than the rest of the city. I don't think, it's the job of this part of the city to kind of continue, holding that burden. And I think that we need to continue to include this kind of vision for single family homeownership, because if we don't include it here, that opportunity is lost and it's going to immediately, move towards a higher density throughout. And why I really support, kind of up to 12 stories along John Nolan is I think that really balances out and allows for the opportunity to have lower density residential and other parts of the plan. And I would, look forward to seeing maybe some opportunities for TIF districts that could capitalize on increment from those large buildings to help support development in other areas of the plan. So I will be supporting it for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there other points the commissioners would like to make, other discussion, or any alders who are attending with us tonight? Alder Evers.
Thank you, Chair. It doesn't sound like there's a groundswell for the alternative, which I do feel to be somewhat disappointing. We had strong testimony from Don Ferber from the Sierra Club about how to make sure that the South Madison plan comports with our 2030 climate goals and beyond, to make sure that we are putting forth planning documents that think not in terms of the next 5 or 10 years, but the next 50 years in a changing world with respect to climate change. The presentation on transit-oriented development that you all heard the other day, I think, I'm trying to remember what Commissioner Shepard said about, it's the transportation is supposed to serve people, not the other way around. It's also true that high-capacity transit like BRT requires a requisite amount of density to be successful. And we're put a lot of capital, a lot of our future investment on the success of this to get more cars off the road. We talk about reducing cars from the road and reducing vehicle miles traveled and coming up with transportation demand management plans. But here's a real opportunity to make sure that the plan for South Madison comports with the overall needs for the rest of the city and the rest of the area, and that we're aligned with our climate goals. But I understand that we want to repair past wrongs. There's part of this that is looking at the injustices that the city participated in and that the local banking industry participated in, denying loans to folks and redlining, and resulting in a lack of single-family home ownership for certain residents on the south side. But I'm also aware that if the city makes a major investment, which it sounds like it's necessary to do land banking to purchase this area, through FHA restrictions, we will not be able to set aside these homes for people of color who have been impacted by past wrongs. So our reparations approach, while noble, we will have to do it through an income-based approach. And again, the challenge about that is that while we can provide subsidies for the initial iteration of purchase price, there is nothing to keep it from being sold somewhere else. And then within 5 and 10 years, have this a gentrified area and not necessarily serving the interests of people of color. So I would really ask you to consider that we need to keep all our goals in mind and somehow find a way to make our concerns about racial and social justice connect with our concerns about resisting gentrification and maintaining affordability, and also seeing that there's a role for home ownership and building and community wealth building, that it need not to be tied to a relic from the past, which I would argue would be single-family neighborhoods, and instead looking at home ownership and other building forms, different types of condos, row houses, townhouses, and get the density that will make our transportation system in this vital area that much more successful. I think it will be a more walkable neighborhood. It will attract people who do not want to have cars, who don't have cars. And I think we have to take advantage of the possibility of getting the density necessary that on a justice level will help us taper off our accelerating housing values, accelerating land costs, accelerating rents, which have a negative deleterious impact on low-income people throughout the city. So don't miss out this advantage to really embrace the flexibility that's called for the amendment. I wish you would go one step further and embrace the flexibility that was suggested in the alternative staff responding to the concerns that were raised by the Housing Strategy Committee. By the way, the amendment, the alternative put forward by staff is in direct response to recommendations from the Housing Strategy Committee. I really feel that, and if you look at that alternative, it's not Xing out single-family homes. It's creating a mix that comports more wisely with transit-oriented development. So I would suggest that you should, in fact, embrace the alternative, embrace flexibility, come up with a plan that looks at 50 to 100 years forward and doesn't look to 20th century models of home ownership in single-family neighborhoods, which, again, we have to look forward and move forward as a city. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Commissioner Cantrell.
Well, I agree with Alder, Evers, and Foster, and I will, I guess, make another amendment and to recommend that the plan incorporate the alternate proposal for the Thorsted property, because I do believe that concept plan is looking forward. And it does provide the opportunities for single family, but it also recognizes that single family is different today than it was 50 years ago or in the 50s, where you had half-acre lots or third-acre lots. I mean, that concept recognizes, I think, the desires of the community, and also I guess, opportunities that we have with transit and the densities that we are required to provide this city, that we're going to have a tremendous amount of population growth and the need for housing that we have right now. So I think the economics will work in that regard. So I would urge my colleagues on the Plan Commission to look forward and to provide this alternate concept, because
I do think we need to get a second here.
Okay.
Seconded by Commissioner Hagenow. Okay, go ahead and finish your.
No, but thank you, Commissioner Hagenow. But because I think that concept looks forward and it preserves what the community actually desires, and it recognizes the needs that we need for transit and other opportunities that we need to fulfill. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. So we have an amendment to the main motion recommending the alternate as shown in the material provided by staff. So we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on that? Did you have anything further that you were wanting to say, or Commissioner Cantrell, or did I just not get your, okay.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very sympathetic to that motion. Sometimes I think we might be trying to sharpen the pencil too much. We're talking about, I think it was 2.6% of the entire neighborhood, and we're also talking about a vast amount of uncertainty, because what we put down on this plan is not necessarily what's going to happen there without the city stepping in and with a partner and doing it. But what I really would like to do is ask Alder Carter, how would you feel about this amendment? Does this get it closer? I mean, I'm a little bit out of touch. I got the sense from Alder Carter's comments that really this plan was missing the mark widely. And now we're talking about an amendment that I think is quite small. But would this amendment be a move in the right direction or the wrong direction? Can I ask that question?
Yeah, I think we can get Alder Carter, if she's willing to comment on that, to do so. Alder Carter, do you want to raise your hand so I can? Oh, there. Okay, Alder Carter.
Thank you. As I said before, that I'm supporting the original plan as written. I think that Alder Heck's paragraph did provide flexibility, but I'm not supporting the alternative plan. I think for two reasons. One, it's a plan. It offers the flexibility. We don't know what's going to happen in 10 years or 5 years. I think that if we are able to acquire the property, and that is an if, then we will really have to get down into the weeds on how we're going to structure that development. But at this point, I'm really looking at providing the flexibility that the community desires. I think that we forget that South Madison, major transportation is public transportation. So the BRT is not going to be something new. We already take Metro at a higher average than most of the city. We don't take it because we want to reduce the carbon. We take it because we have to take public transportation because we don't have vehicles. So we're already contributing to that by virtue of riding the bus. Did I answer your question? I almost went off the cliff there. So
I think you did. Did
I? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Pull me back.
Commissioner Fernandez, did you have anything else? No. Okay. Alder Lemmer. And
Thank you.
We're focusing on the amendment here. So go ahead, Alder.
Yep, I'll be speedy since I think I made my feelings clear before. I will not be supporting the amendment. And also Commissioner Solheim, I think, said it best. So I will, I will keep it very brief. I think it's clear that the community and that planning staff recommend the original. I think that we need to listen to the voices of the community, of the people who live here, who have been engaged throughout the process. I think it's really important that they're heard. And as has been mentioned repeatedly, the Thor Stand area is a tiny part of the overall plan. It's 2.4%. And I just think this is a small step to help increase home ownership in this area and to help to combat the inequities that have existed here for so many decades. So I will be supporting the original and not supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hagenow.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I will be obviously supporting this amendment as I seconded it. I believe, well, I can appreciate Alder Carter's comments and Alder Lemmer's comments and really everybody's comments, wanting to, really incorporate everybody, the South Madison's community's thoughts and input into this plan. However, I do believe that this the Thorstead area especially is a prime area for increasing residential density, and I believe that we should be doing what we can to make it at least, I know this isn't set in stone, but make it clear that it could be placed in this area. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that. We've been talking about this subject for quite a bit now here tonight. And that'll be that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Solheim.
I'll be quick. I just wanted to address this amendment directly. I will not support it. I think that the language in the prior amendment provided some flexibility, and the main reason I'm not supporting the alternative is I just don't really like changing up something that was clearly a big focus for the community, this particular area. I don't really like changing that map this late in the game without additional community feedback, and I think that we have some flexibility with that additional language. So for that reason, I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Solheim. I don't see any other hands. We will come to a vote, and I would like to ask Heather to get a count of the yays and nays for this, because we obviously have a mix here. Heather?
Commissioner Cantrell?
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez?
No.
Alder Lemmer?
No.
Alder Heck?
No.
Commissioner Solheim?
No.
Commissioner Spencer?
No.
Commissioner Hagenow?
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard?
Oh, I'm the alternate. Am I voting tonight?
You are voting tonight, yes.
Okay, no.
Okay, we have 2 yeses and 6 nos.
Motion fails. We are back to the main motion. Is there any further discussion on the main motion? Seeing no raised hands, we will come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is agenda item 4, 68628, authorizing the City of Madison Planning Division to submit an application to the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission to expand the Central Urban Service Area boundary to include lands in the Yahara Hills Neighborhood Development Plan area. And we will hear from Urvashi Martin, both on this agenda item and I believe on the next one, which is agenda item 5, Legistar 68629, authorizing the City of Madison Planning Division to submit an application to the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission to expand the Central Urban Service Area boundary to include lands within the Northeast Neighborhoods Development Plan area. Urvashi, if you want me to unmute you, you're going to have to raise your hand because I don't see you here.
Her hand is raised.
Oh, I don't see it.
You're unmuted.
There. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair Zellers.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So as Chair Zellers indicated, we'll be doing a joint presentation on the Central Urban Service Area applications for the Northeast Neighborhood Development Plan and the Yahara Hills Neighborhood Development Plan expansion area. So just to start off, for any development to be served with sanitary sewer, that property needs to be within the Central Urban Service Area. And the general process for the Central Urban Service Area application, as defined by city ordinance, is that Planning Division staff prepares a draft application, and then the draft application has to be reviewed by these 7 city agencies that are listed here: engineering, traffic engineering, water utility, metro transit, parks, police, and fire. These agencies need to assess their ability to serve these expanded areas and also determine how much it would cost to serve these expanded areas. After staff receives comments on the draft application, the application then goes to the Plan Commission for their review. And Plan Commission reviews the ability to provide services, the cost of these services, and if the application is consistent with adopted city plans, the comprehensive plan, and the neighborhood development plan. If the Plan Commission recommends approval, the application then goes to the Common Council for their review. The Common Council reviews the application for their consistency with health, welfare, and the best interests of the city. And if the Common Council recommends approval, it would and authorizes submission. Planning Division staff then submits the application to the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission. CARPC then reviews the application with their board, and if they approve, it goes to the DNR for their review and approval. So the comprehensive plan in the land use and transportation element has one of the strategies to facilitate compact growth to reduce the development of farmland. And one of the actions to achieve that strategy is to focus peripheral growth in areas that are already served by utilities. And that would be areas that would be within the Central Urban Service Area. This is the boundary of the existing Central Urban Service Area, which is shown in the pink outline on the map. The blue areas on the map are showing the Central Urban Service Area expansions that the city has made since 2007 up till 2018. 2018 was the last time when the city had submitted a Central Urban Service Area expansion for the west side of the city to add lands in the Alderberry neighborhood. Staff uses a very deliberate process in determining which areas should be added to the Central Urban Service Area, so these expansions don't happen very often. This time around, staff were looking at 3 areas: High Point Raven neighborhood on the west side, and the Northeast Neighborhood Development Plan area, and the Yahara Hills Neighborhood Development Plan area. Staff then decided to scale it back and just submit 2 applications. for the Northeast neighborhood expansion area and the Yahara Hills expansion area. A little bit of background about the Northeast neighborhood expansion area. The map here is showing the boundaries of that expansion area that we're proposing. It's east of the interstate, south of Lean Road, north of Commercial Avenue. It's adjacent to Jenna Village, Woods Farm, and Eastwood Springs. The expansion area is approximately 407 acres. It's located in the Northeast Neighborhood Development Planning area. Almost all of the lands within the expansion area are currently within the town of Burke, which is expected to come into the city no later than 2036. One of the primary needs why this expansion area is being proposed is because the city has a development proposal for one of the properties within the expansion area. There's a development proposal for the SC Swiderski Land Company LLC property. The map here is showing the conceptual development plan that is proposed for that site. The developers are proposing approximately 402 units, which is a mix of single-family attached duplexes, townhomes, and multifamily units. A little bit of background about the other expansion area for the Yahara Hills neighborhood expansion area. The map here is showing the boundaries of that expansion area. It's immediately to the east of the existing Central Urban Service area. The expansion area is approximately 934 acres. It's located in the Yahara Hills neighborhood development planning area. Of the 934 acres, 765 are located within the city of Madison, and the rest of it is located in the town of Cottage Grove. This area has a lot of environmental and natural features. So because of that, there's very small percentage of developable acreage, which is approximately 156 acres. This expansion area is also including the existing Dane County landfill, which is shown on the map north of the Beltline. That landfill is currently within the limited service area. It's approximately 261 acres. And with this proposal, expanded area, we are proposing to convert that limited service area into a full service area. Some of the primary needs for proposing this expansion, the city has created an industrial TIF district in this area, which is shown on the map in the blue outline, TIF 49, which covers the Femerite Drive area. This TIF was approved earlier this year. This is one of those areas where there's industrial lands that are available. The city doesn't have a lot of area where there's industrial lands available. The comprehensive plan and the neighborhood development plan also recommend industrial land uses in this area. So this TIF district is likely going to expand in the future to include some of those industrial lands to the east. Another reason this expansion is being proposed is to include the proposed landfill that Dane County is proposing on the eastern portion of the Yahara Hills golf course. There's also a sustainability campus that is proposed, which will also be part of this expansion area. The expansion area would also include the county's proposed East District campus and some of the other county facilities in this area. So this proposed expansion area is including all the county holdings except for the future solar farm, which the county is proposing on the kind of the northeast side of this expansion area. So now we'll briefly summarize some of the comments that we received from the several city agencies on their ability to serve and how much it would cost to serve these expansion areas. So city engineering indicated that for streets, developments that are bordered by arterial or collector streets would require a city cost share. For arterial streets, it's between $1,000 to $1,500 per linear foot. For collector streets, it's between $500 to $800 per linear foot. For local streets and bike paths, those are typically paid and constructed for by developers. Streets and paths, however, will require some kind of ongoing maintenance that the city would have to cover. For sanitary sewer, for the Northeast neighborhoods, there are 2 sanitary sewer impact fee districts that will pay for any sewer extensions in that area. For the Yahara Hills neighborhood, the northern portion will need a new sewer impact fee district to pay for any sewer extensions. The southern portion for any sewer extensions would be paid by Dane County as part of the landfill project, and utilities to the site will be extended as part of the County Highway AB project. For stormwater, for the Northeast neighborhoods, a new stormwater impact fee district will need to be created to support additional developments in that area, and also for the reconstruction of Felon Road. The Northeast neighborhoods falls within the Starkweather Creek watershed, and this watershed study is currently ongoing and is expected to be completed next year in 2022. That will identify some additional stormwater improvements that could be needed in this area. For the Yahara Hills neighborhoods, there are 2 drainage ways that need to be improved along Femroy Drive. The Yahara Hills also falls within the Door Creek watershed, and this watershed study is expected to be completed in 2023 that will also identify some additional stormwater improvements. From traffic engineering, for any ped bike facilities for arterial streets, they would be modified as per recommended by adopted plans and will provide for adequate pedestrian and bicycle facilities. And the cost of these pedestrian bicycle facilities is typically paid for by developers. For Metro Transit, both the expansion areas currently don't have an existing transit service that serves the area. There are also no operators of shared ride taxis that serve these expansion areas. For any kind of future bus service to serve these areas, for the Northeast neighborhoods, the transit network redesign that Metro is currently undertaking, some of the initial draft maps from that study indicate that there will be an all-day transit service stop at Milwaukee Street and Sprecher Road intersection, which is approximately 1.25 miles south of the expansion area. For the Yahara Hills neighborhood, the initial draft maps of the transit network redesign study indicates that the all-day transit service stop that is at Agricultural Drive and Femroy Road intersection will be eliminated, and that would be replaced with just a weekday peak hour service. And this stop is also approximately 1.25 miles to the west of the expansion area. The comments from the police department, both these expansion areas are served by the police department's East District. There are some factors that the police department determines in determining what the need would be for additional staffing to serve the area. They look at the population projected from full build out of these expansion areas, and also looks at a comparable area in the city to determine what the demand would be for calls for service with this additional population. So for the Northeast neighborhoods, the police department indicated that there would be a need for 1.3 patrol officers. This would result in a prorated total cost of close to $160,000, and that would include the cost of the additional staffing and also any vehicle cost. For the Yahara Hills neighborhood, there would be a need for 0.12 patrol officers, and there would be a total prorated cost of close to $15,000, which would also include the cost of the additional staffing and any vehicle cost associated. For comments from the fire department, for the northeast neighborhoods, the closest fire station is Station 11, located at Nelson Road. The average cost to provide fire and emergency medical services is $350 per dwelling unit. So using the full build out of this expansion area, we have a projection of close to 2,000 dwelling units. So the cost would be close to $700,000 annually to provide fire and emergency services. For the Yahara Hills neighborhoods, the closest fire station is Station 14, located at Dairy Drive. And the average cost to provide fire emergency services to this area, again, using $350 per dwelling unit, with the projection of 15 dwelling units for that expansion area, would result in $5,250 annually. Comments from the Parks Department. For the Northeast Neighborhood Expansion Area, the Northeast Neighborhood Development Plan proposes 3 parks for the expansion area. Parkland is typically dedicated as development starts to occur. Park improvements could range anywhere between $1 million to $1.5 million, depending on the park size and the amenities that would be provided. These are funded in part by impact fees. For the operating costs, those could range anywhere between $15,000 to $30,000 per year per park for routine maintenance like lawn mowing, snow plowing, etc. For the Yahara Hills neighborhood, the proposed landfill that is being proposed on the eastern portion of the golf course would result in closing 18 holes, and that would reduce the Yahara Hills golf course maintenance fee from 2025. Comments from the water utility. There wouldn't be any additional supply capacity that would be required. As development starts to occur, water service would be provided by extending the water mains, and any additional supply cost is already planned for and accounted for in the water utilities long-range budgets. So that's all I've got. I'm also joined here with Jeff Greger and Pat MP. Have also worked on a staff team on this project, so we are available here to answer questions. Thank you.
Okay, we have no registrants for this item. Are there questions of staff? Commissioner Fernandez.
I'm just after the big picture a little bit.
You're going to have to speak up. Your speaker is having a problem again.
Can you hear me now?
Try it again.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Particularly for Yahara Hills, why, if there are 900 acres, of which only I think it was 150 are developable, why do we include in our central urban service area lands that can't be developed? Maybe I'm just sort of missing the point a little bit, but I'm not quite sure why the boundaries were drawn to include undevelopable lands.
Urvashi?
I'll let Jeff take this question.
Okay, very good. Jeff?
So 2 reasons, excuse me. First, we need to draw our boundary line based on parcels. So any given parcel could have an area that would need to go into environmental corridor. There are a lot of environmental features out in the Yahara Hills neighborhood that would require being put in environmental corridor. The other thing is land we put in the environmental corridor does not count for sewerage fees. So it's advantageous to put land in the corridor, but essentially it's the need to follow property lines to set up the boundary and the amount of environmental areas out here.
Thank you, Jeff. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Fernandez?
I guess it did. Could I follow up with one more question?
Absolutely.
We saw all the costs, but presumably, like any place else, those are going to be offset by additional tax revenues. Is there any reason to think that these additions will not wind up more or less neutral with respect to that? I mean, these are not really cost burdens that are being placed on the city, they're going to be offset by tax revenue from those citizens. Is that correct?
Urvashi or Jeff? Jeff, did you want to take it?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think you could argue that some of them would definitely be offset. And, you know, those costs are at build out, so they're kind of incremental as you head towards build out. So the cost for, you know, say, additional police officers may not be realized till years down the line. And it depends on which area you're talking about. So, you know, industrial taxes are something different versus taxes on a single family or a apartment building. So for Northeast neighborhoods, you may recoup more cost or less cost depending on how a structure is taxed. So I hopefully that gets at your question.
Does that do that?
No, I guess it does. You know, in a general way, I mean, I have no way of really looking at those cost numbers and making sense of them, really, because without some estimate of the tax income, it's abstract information. But I guess I'm asking in a more general way: is there any reason to think that these areas of the city would not, like every other area of the city, tax revenue roughly cover the cost of providing city services? And maybe there is no answer to that, but that's all I'm asking. I have no way really to evaluate the cost data without some sense of what's being offset by the residents.
It's a very good observation. Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Good observation. And I'd like to just follow that up. I don't see any other raised hands. I note that the Parks Department, as typical, has the impact fees. Other communities in Wisconsin have impact fees for such things as public safety. Have we yet begun exploring that for Madison? And this kind of gets at Commissioner Fernandez's question too, of having some impact fees then to help pay for the costs that the city would need to be incurring. Maybe Heather's the best person to answer that. Do you know if the city is beginning to look at that at all?
Thank you, Chair Zellers. I'm not aware of any recent conversations that we've had with either relevant agencies or the city attorney's office, but they could be going on, and the planning division just isn't in a loop on them. But I'm unaware of any recent conversations about adding new categories of impact fees.
Yeah. Given where we are in terms of finances, I think that would be a good move to make. Are there any other questions of staff in regard to this? Seeing none, I will look for a motion, and let's make it a motion for both of the agenda items. Commissioner Cantrell.
I'll recommend that we approve both the Yahara Hills Central Urbanized Service Area Expansion and the Northeast Neighborhood Central Urban Service Area Expansion, finding them consistent with the comprehensive plan and the neighborhood plans, and also finding that the city is able to serve both expansion areas.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Shepard. Is there any further? Did you want to speak to your motion, Commissioner Cantrell?
No, I think they're very appropriate expansions.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, motion passes unanimously. Next item on our agenda is agenda item 18, Legistar 68194, located at 2219 Monroe Street, 13th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in a campus institutional district without a campus master plan for an addition to an existing building that exceeds 4,000 square feet in floor area to allow construction of an addition to Edgewood High School. And we are not going to have a presentation on this tonight, but Tim Parks is with us and he was the staff for that. So if there are questions at the appropriate time, he will be available to answer them. And we do, it looks like Tim does want to say something. Tim.
Yeah, I've just been informed by the project team from Edgewood that in light of the item being taken off consent, that they would like to present the project to the Plan Commission. So as the chair is calling on registrants to call on, we would like to speak. So I would call on Kelly Hensler, who's the architect for the project, to present it to the Plan Commission before the other registrants and then resume the other speakers.
Okay, and Tim, did you want to present anything at all on this? No, okay.
No, the staff report stands. I'm happy to answer questions after the public hearing.
Okay, sounds great. I will open the public hearing. Kelly Hensler, Yuma Drive, Madison, support, now wishing to speak, represented Edgewood High School of the Sacred Heart. Kelly, you have 3 minutes.
Would I be able to present then?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So we wanted to address council in the neighborhoods as well, and just want to go through the project in total, what was incorporated in the project as part of this. And so as part of the older master plan, there was Performing Arts Center, elevator addition, and then our commons. As you can see, the dashed line is the existing location of the commons. So we will not be, we'll be replacing the commons in kind and building up a 2-story addition in the exact same location on the same footprint, apart from a small elevator expansion. This is a view of the exterior design, and as you can see, we are replicating much of the existing materials, the brick, the glass, which will actually be a bird-safe glass, and then some of the stone that you'll see in the new additions and replicating what was older and original stone in the 1925s building. Same thing, using similar mullions and whatnot, and then also a view from the Monroe Street. And what's important to this note is actually this view is taken in the parking lot, so Monroe Street's a little bit further back, and this is the closest property line to this addition, which is about 500 feet. If you look back at this project, you will see the exterior lighting strategy, which are a total of a maximum of 16 downlights and cammed downlights, and then 5 linear downlights as well, which will graze, but also provide light. Oh, it looks like it's speeding up my slides on Anya here. What are you guys seeing? Okay. That's not what I'm presenting, but, and the exterior design. Are you seeing the elevations? Because
no, can we, there, is that what you're looking for, Kelly?
That's what I'm looking at. Yeah, now okay. That's what I'm looking at, correct. Yep.
Okay, good.
So apart from the lighting strategy, there will also be a small lit signage, and that's face lit lettering, so black channel lettering. Just the face will be a very diffused light, not even enough light output to what we need for the exiting requirements, both day and night. So we'll actually be supplementing that with the required can lighting under the canopy that we need for the exit signage, the exit requirements as well. We will not be adding any lighting in regards to any site lighting or fixtures, the only lighting you will see added will be the canopy lighting and the required egress lighting. Down here, there's one wall pack, and it is concealed. And then the small cans for egress requirements that will supplement in total the lumens required for the egress.
Kelly, that concludes your available time. Thank you. The next registrant is Sean Shea, Woodrow Street, neither support nor opposed and wishing to speak, representing the Dudgeon Monroe neighborhood. And you have 3 minutes, Sean.
Chair, there's no person by that name in attendance.
Okay, the next registrant is Ethan Brodsky, Woodrow Street, neither support nor opposed and wishing to speak.
All right, you guys hear me?
Yes, Ethan, you have 3 minutes.
I'm generally supportive of the proposed development, but have two concerns that warrant imposing conditions. On the issue of light, the proposed development includes large curtain wall windows that appear to have approximately 4,000 square feet of glass. This could be a substantial source of light spillage that would be visible from homes to Monroe Street and Woodrow Street. I propose the PC impose the following conditions on lighting. Indoor lighting in any space with substantial exterior glass shall be limited and controlled to avoid unnecessary glare and spillage. Lighting in all such rooms will be controlled by timers and/or occupancy sensors to ensure that it is consistently turned off at night and when the rooms are not in use. 2, between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., exterior lighting other than that required for safety and reasonable illumination of entrances and signage is prohibited. There shall be no new accent lighting, facade lighting, or other upwards-facing lighting illuminated during these hours. All such exterior lighting shall be controlled by timers to ensure that it is shut off during the prohibited hours. 3, actually that one's not relevant. 4, lighting for the entranceway and vestibule must be on separate circuits using small lighting fixtures that are physically proximate to those spaces and proportionate to the areas they are illuminating so that these areas can be lit for safety and security without illuminating the entire space and facade using high bay or soffit overhang lighting. On the issue of noise, the parcel already hosts outdoor nighttime and early morning events that generate disruptive noise to the neighborhood. A recent event this September included an outdoor DJ and amplified music and generated noise levels measuring at 75 dB on sidewalks and 73 dB inside neighboring homes until 10:50 p.m. and generated numerous complaints. Any new construction should carry with it conditions that prohibit the permanent establishment of additional disruptive noise associated with their use. I propose the following condition on noise. Any mechanically generated or electrically amplified sound, including that from portable PA systems, shall not exceed the level specified in MGO 24086. This specifically means that the levels shall be below 65 dBA slow for non-impulsive noise and 60 dBA fast for impulse noise, as measured at neighboring residentially zoned property lines. Outdoor amplified sound is prohibited between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. in all circumstances. While some of these conditions are stricter than the basic standard MGO, this is a conditional use permit application, which the applicant is requesting an exception to the ordinarily permitted use for this parcel. If the minimum standards in the city's ordinances were adequate to regulate this development, then it would be permitted by right, and we wouldn't be discussing it here. It is entirely reasonable for this body to set conditions that may be stricter than those in MGO, if that is what is required to ensure that the CUP standards for approval are met. In particular, substantial sources of light and noise pollution in a residential neighborhood violate conditions 1, 3, and 9 in 183.6a, and thus conditions relating to the establishment, location, construction, maintenance, and operation of the conditional use may be specified by the PC according to that ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. I am going back to the registrant who also notes that they are sometimes known as Shoshana Shai. Do we have a registrant tech facilitator? Is there
She was having tech problems earlier, she said too. I don't know if they're resolved yet.
Sure, we do not have anyone with that name.
Okay, thank you. Then we have registered Michael Elliott, Smoky Trail, Fitchburg support, not wishing to speak but available to answer questions, representing Edgewood High School, and also Mark Schubach, West Wingra Drive, Madison, support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions, also representing Edgewood High School. Are there questions of any of our registrants? Seeing none, are there questions of staff? Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to ask staff, those were the conditions that Mr. Brodsky was suggesting obviously were intended to minimize light impact on the neighborhood. But would these kinds of conditions be ordinarily attached to this? Does staff have a recommendation with regard to these additional recommendations, or do you feel that the existing regulations are adequate to control light spillover?
Matt Tucker had raised his hand first, I think. So Matt, and also Tim Parks might have some comments on that. Matt?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Plan Commission. I do believe that the city's existing exterior illumination standards are adequate to deal with exterior light. It's worth pointing out that light emanating from the inside of the building is not regulated by the city's exterior illumination standards. And this another regulation that further limits the ability of the city from regulating light is the min-max building code, which is basically how the usage of energy is controlled inside a building. And what we've found is lighting levels are within the min-max limitations for energy usage inside buildings, further limiting any ability for the city to condition that otherwise building code requirement.
I'll just add from a review standpoint that the nearest point of the proposed addition, which by and large replaces a building or a portion of the building on a very similar footprint, is 500 feet from the Monroe Street property line, and therefore further than that to the nearest occupied property, which would be across Monroe Street. It's over 600 feet to Woodrow Street, and staff doesn't believe that any internal illumination from a building at those distances would have a significant impact on those properties across Monroe and Woodrow Streets. And we would be concerned that any illumination that bright from this building would be blinding to the folks in the building. So we don't feel that the interior lighting concern is one that the Plan Commission need be concerned with. And I'll also, while I have the opportunity, note that I don't feel that it would be appropriate to put the noise restriction that the speaker requested on a request to build a building, again, at the same relative location as a building of the same purpose, where there is no exterior sound source proposed other than mechanicals. And I don't believe that that was the crux of the comments, which were talking about a portable speaker. I just don't feel like that would be relevant for the Plan Commission to condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Did that answer your question, Commissioner Fernandez? And do you have any follow-ups or additional questions?
Oh, that was an excellent response. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Any other question of staff? Then I will look for a motion, please. Commissioner Cantrell.
I will recommend that the Plan Commission find that the standards are met and approve the conditional use to allow the construction of an addition to Edgewood High School at 2219 Monroe Street, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report.
Do we have a second? seconded by Kathleen Spencer. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Commissioner Cantrell?
Yeah, just briefly, I think this is a very sensitive addition, very minimal addition to this building, in practically the same footprint, and it's a very attractive contemporary addition. So I guess I would recommend all my commission members to support this.
Thank you, Alder Evers, and Alder Evers represents this area. Go ahead, Alder.
Thank you, Chair. And Sean Shai, who had trouble putting forth her comments, emailed them to me. I could read them into the record if you'd like, and then also just read my support for this project, which, if I may bother you to do so, would that be all right?
Is there additional insights? So you want to read in the comments?
The vice president of the neighborhood association tried to show up to give her own testimony, and then couldn't log in for whatever reason, sent it to me and asked that I would share it. If I did question why she didn't send it directly to the Plan Commission members through pccomments@cityofmadison.com, but I've not heard
because
that.
we have closed the public hearing, and that's...
All right, well, that's fine. I understand. Then I will just read my own comments, if that's all right. And generally speaking, the neighborhood association did not object to this project, and offered some concerns. But let me just read. I sent this already, and maybe you've looked at it, maybe you don't. Dear Plan Commission members, Edgewood High School representatives met with the Dungeon Road Neighborhood Association last week to discuss the proposal before you. At that meeting, I raised a series of questions about the sustainability features of the building design, emphasizing how important it is that our new buildings are as energy efficient as possible, a necessary and essential step in reducing our city's carbon footprint. I also posed questions about the high school's lighting plan for the building, knowing the concern nearby neighbors have about potential light pollution in the form of glare and spillover. I am grateful Edgewood recognized my concerns about mitigating climate change and have taken sustainability into consideration. I am also reassured that Edgewood is aware of neighborhood concerns about light pollution. The city's lighting ordinance, as an aside, has not been updated in over 15 years. It's my hope we can move forward as a city in a manner similar to what Pittsburgh just announced in their quest to be dark sky compliant. All this aside, I support Edgewood's application for approval to build a new commons on their property and urge you to vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Evers. Are there any other comments? Seeing no raised hands, we will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on, we come to agenda item 20, special item of business, Legistar 68716, confirming the format of Plan Commission meetings from January through May of 2022. And basically, our choices are to have meetings virtually, as we are tonight, or in person. We could say, for example, we want to have them virtual through March and then the remainder in person. Or we could have them all virtual or all in person. As just a point of information, the Common Council meetings are going to be held virtually until May, or through May, I think. So with that, I would open up for a motion and discussion. Commissioner Hagenau.
Oh boy. I guess I would move that we continue our meetings virtually through May.
And do we have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Fernandez. Commissioner Hagenow, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Sure, just real quick. I mean, I think it kind of goes without saying, we're obviously still in the midst of a pandemic, and while this virtual platform may not be absolutely perfect due to technical issues and things of that nature, it is, I believe, the best we can do while continuing to maintain the safety of everybody on the commission and the public, of course. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hagenow. Are there other comments? Alder Heck.
Thank you. I strongly support this motion, and I would just remind commissioners that by some miraculous circumstance, should we feel comfortable meeting in person before the end of May, we can always vote again and give sufficient notice to staff to change our format. But I rather don't anticipate that's going to happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Heck. Are there other comments? Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah. The only thing I have to add is that there have been a number of reports in local media that actually many residents support the virtual meetings because it allows them to actually participate rather than having to come down once again to City Hall and that sort of thing. So, beyond our own preferences, there are benefits of this for citizens. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Shepard. Any other comments, input? Seeing no raised hands, we will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Motion passes unanimously. Is there any business by members? If not, we will go to the Secretary's report. Heather.
Thank you, Chair. First, I wanted to mention just a reminder that the city's statement of interest forms are due by January 4th. And for anyone on a city board, committee, or commission, those are due each year. And so the website is there on the agenda. Please do take the time to complete that. It's pretty quick for most. A quick rundown of some of the major actions by the Common Council at last week's meeting. They did end up adopting the planned development zoning for the core campus proposal on State Street, as well as the rezoning for the 200 block of North Midvale Boulevard, and also unanimously and without discussion approved the text amendment related to accessory dwelling units. So those are now permitted citywide on all single family lots. And moving ahead to our January 10th meeting, there's a lot on the agenda. I'll mention a couple of highlights. First, the next part of the larger planned development at the Hill Farms Madison Yards area at 702 North Midvale Boulevard and 401 North Seago Road. And then the second larger project I'll mention is on the 500 block of West Johnson Street and 300 block of North Bassett Street in Conklin Place. It's a redevelopment involving the demolition of several existing buildings for a 12-story, 144-unit apartment building. This is in the area, generally just west of the downtown, on the west side of the downtown. And then I think I'll note that the January 24th agenda may have other additions coming soon. We'll have another intake meeting that may feed into this, and then anything that was referred this evening. But that does look like thus far to be a relatively light meeting. And then finally, I wanted to mention that I'll be working with staff and Chair Zellers to put out some suggestions for dates for our special meetings in 2022, looking again to have one each quarter, and we'll try to find dates that conflict the least with committees that we know some of you are, other committees that we know some of you are a part of. I expect to get a draft list out in mid-January of those dates. And I think that's all I have this evening. Thank you so much. And everyone have a great end of the year. What a year 2021 was. Thank you so much for your time and service to the city.
And I would like to second that. Thank you all, because Plan Commission does require a fair amount of work. And so thank you all very much for putting in that time for the good of the city. It's really, really appreciated. So thank you, and hope you do have happy holidays. And I would be looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Solheim, second by Commissioner Cantrell. And I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Okay, we are adjourned.